I opened my eyes, my head pounding like someone had hit it with a hammer. Blinding white lights from the ceiling blurred my vision. I could hear machines beeping, rushed footsteps, and someone speaking quickly, filled with anxiety. My throat burned, so dry it felt scorched. I couldn't even get a word out. "He's awake, he's awake," a nurse's high-pitched voice rang out, shrill and piercing. A doctor rushed to my bedside, his face serious but composed. He held up a small pen light, shined it directly into my eyes, and asked urgently, "Do you know where you are? What's your name?" William Harper," I answered weakly, each word tearing through my throat. "What just happened to me?" "You barely made it, Mr. Harper. Your heart nearly stopped for good," the doctor said, his voice like a scalpel. "We had to airlift you here by medevac. You've been in a deep coma for almost 48 hours. Closed my eyes. A chill spread from my chest down to my legs. Everything spun inside my head. A coma? Airlifted? I remembered driving out of Houston, planning to stay overnight somewhere along the highway toward Dallas, then suddenly, sharp, crushing pain in my chest, like someone squeezing my heart in a vice. Each beat felt like a hammer blow. I couldn't breathe. I had pulled over, hands trembling as I dialed 911, and then nothing, just blackness. I'm only 43. Never smoked, rarely drank. Just spent nearly 2 decades behind the wheel of a long-haul truck. I used to think I was tough enough to survive those endless miles, sleepless nights and countless cups of awful roadside coffee. But in the end, my body betrayed me. The nurse adjusted the IV bag and handed me a small cup of water. She spoke softly. "You're very lucky, William. Most people don't make it through a heart attack that severe." Lucky? I repeated the word in my head. I didn't feel lucky, just dizzy and hollow. I reached for my phone beside the bed. The screen lit up with missed calls and text alerts. A few were from other drivers, some from the company dispatcher, but only one from my wife, Clara. I quickly opened her message, my eyes blurring as I read her words. "You left me alone again to chase money on the road. I've had enough, William. This is the last time. I need to live for myself. I deserve more than this." I frowned, reading it again and again. My heart clenched. Not from illness this time, but from the cruel words of the woman I had loved for 12 years. No question about my health, no comforting words, just cold blame. Clara had once been my whole world. We met when I was 31 and she was 28, in a small roadside cafe I used to stop at during cross-country runs. I thought I was the luckiest man alive when she chose to marry me. But now I realized I had been wrong about everything. I read the message once more. My chest felt like stone. The ache pulsed through my whole body. Maybe this was the most painful moment of my life. My body was weak, my heart barely holding on, and the woman I thought would be there through it all had turned her back when I needed her the most. The doctor nearby must have seen my expression tighten. He spoke more gently this time. "Mr. Harper, you need to rest. Don't think too much right now. It's not good for your heart. We'll keep you here at least a week for monitoring." I didn't answer. I just turned toward the window, half closed. Outside, the sky was overcast, mirroring the storm inside me. I caught my reflection in the glass. Faint, tired, pitiful. I shut my eyes, took a deep breath, and fought back the tears. I made a promise to myself right then. This would be the last time I allowed myself to feel this weak. I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not from a heart attack, not from a heartless message. Because I knew what lay ahead wasn't just a battle for my health. It would be a brutal fight to reclaim my life and the self-worth I knew I deserved. I woke in the middle of the night to the sound of my phone buzzing. The room was dim, lit only by a low-ceiling light. The clock read 3:17. I reached for the phone. One new message from Clara. Just one line. A screenshot of our joint bank account. Balance, nothing left. Below it, a short sentence. I deserve that money after everything I've sacrificed. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The joint account I had built over years, for emergencies, truck repairs, and a safety net for both of us, wiped clean. No explanation, no remorse, just a declaration, like it was owed to her. I kept staring. Rage stirred in my chest, but it was buried beneath exhaustion. The heart attack had drained my body. But the deeper pain? It wasn't anger. It was weariness. Crushing, soul-deep fatigue. Tired of holding everything together. Tired of believing in something that turned out to be a lie. I typed one emoji, then flipped the phone face down on the table. Not another word. The next morning, the doctor walked in with a slight smile. "Mr. Harper, you're looking better today. We believe you can be discharged within the next 24 hours, but you'll need to rest completely for at least 6 weeks. No driving, no heavy lifting, and especially, no stress." I nodded mechanically. "Yes, I understand. Do you have someone picking you up?" I paused. "Yes, my younger brother, Ben. He's in Fort Worth." I lied. Ben and I hadn't had a serious conversation in 2 years, not since our mother's funeral, but I knew I couldn't go home. I couldn't walk through that door like nothing had happened, not when Clara had just wiped out the money I'd spent 12 years saving, while I lay, unconscious, between life and death. That night, I called Ben. "Will? Oh my God, is that really you? Uncle Ray told me something happened. Are you okay?" "I'm still breathing, for now," I sighed. "I need a place to stay for a few days. Can I crash at your place?" Ben didn't hesitate. "Of course. I'll come get you. But Will, what happened?" I looked out the hospital window, where the streetlight cast a faint reflection against the cold glass. A few things I should have seen a long time ago. The next morning, I signed my discharge papers and walked out of the hospital in an old gray coat, my mind a hollow shell. Ben picked me up in Dad's old pickup. He didn't say much, just looked at me for a long time, then whispered, "I won't ask if you're not ready to talk." We drove for nearly an hour to his home, a modest single-story house in the suburbs south of the city. At the kitchen table, just as our second cup of coffee went cold, I told him everything. Ben narrowed his eyes. "Clara emptied the account while you were still in the ICU?" I nodded. "And she only sent one message. I deserve that money." Ben let out a bitter laugh. "Jesus, Will. I don't even know whether to be angry or feel sorry for her." I said nothing, just stared at my cold coffee. "Whose name was on the account?" Ben asked. "It was a joint account, but I deposited most of the money." I paused. "I moved my paycheck and backup savings to another bank a few months ago. Clara doesn't know about those." Ben nodded slowly. "Good. Keep it that way." That night, I lay on the couch in Ben's living room, my back sore from the stiff mattress, my heart still aching from what couldn't be soothed. But I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about all the times Clara told me to get home early. All those cold hugs, all those trips with friends I'd never met. The puzzle pieces were finally fitting together, painting a picture of betrayal I'd been too blind to see. Clara didn't just empty the account. She had a plan, and I knew. I couldn't fall apart now. This was just the warning bell. And if she thought William Harper would walk away quietly, then she never really knew the man she once called her everything. Ben didn't ask any more questions during my first 3 days at his place. He just let me lie on the long couch by the living room window, where the morning sun was just warm enough to keep me from freezing, but not enough to melt the slow-burning thoughts in my head. I was never the complaining type. During 12 years of marriage, I'd chosen silence over arguments. Every time Clara grew distant, I made excuses for her. Stress from work, hormone shifts, age. But now, with a weak heartbeat and a stomach too empty to hold anything but broth, I understood. Some wounds don't come from one big betrayal. They come from hundreds of quiet moments we should have spoken up, and didn't. On the 4th afternoon, I opened my phone. Still nothing from Clara, No message, no call, no email, even though I'd been discharged for nearly a week. She didn't care if I lived or died. I opened the banking app, still $0 in our joint account. But what startled me more was a transaction from 5 days ago, right after I woke up in the hospital. A transfer of $3,800 to a different account. The recipient's name? Ellison Lane. I'd never heard that name in all 12 years with Clara. I took a screenshot and sent it to Ben. "Do you know anyone named Ellison Lane?" Ben replied in under a minute. "No, but I'll ask a friend at the bank. You rest, let us handle the digging." I put the phone in my shirt pocket and for the first time since leaving the hospital, I stepped outside to Ben's backyard. The small yard was filled with low shrubs, a couple of wooden chairs, and a rusty iron table, just like the kind my dad used to love. I sat down and stared at the sunset, stretching across the horizon, trying to remember the last time Clara had smiled at me. Maybe it was 2 Christmases ago, when I gave her the Italian leather shoes she'd mentioned once in passing. She hugged me tightly and said, "You always remembered the smallest things." I thought it was love. Now, I think it was just surprise. Someone who no longer expected anything from her husband, suddenly getting attention again. Weeks after that Christmas, her habits changed. She started coming home later, left her phone outside the bedroom, took calls from the board in the middle of dinner. And I believed her. I believed in her job. I believed in stress. I believed in everything, except my own gut. I was blind. That night Ben brought out 2 beers, set one in front of me. "Doctor said no drinking," I reminded him. "Not for drinking," he smirked. "Just something cold to hold that's not your phone or a hospital bill." I smiled faintly, then asked, "Ben, have you ever felt your wife change, but didn't dare ask?" Ben was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Remember Sarah, my second wife? Some days I'd sit right next to her and feel like we were on different planets. She'd talk, I'd nod, but in my head I was just trying not to break the silence. Because I knew if I did, everything would come crashing down." I looked at him, eyes heavy, and then she still left. But at least that time, I knew I'd tried. I took a deep breath, locked eyes with my brother. "Are you ready to help me find the truth?" Ben nodded firmly. "You're not a victim, Will. You just need to stand back up the right way." I went back to the living room, opened my laptop, and logged into an email account Clara never knew about. Then I opened a folder full of old documents. Insurance policies, house paperwork, copies of bank statements I'd used for transfers. That's when I noticed something. The house we were living in was actually in my name only, after a recent refinancing. Clara had claimed she was too busy in meetings to come sign, so I handled it myself. I hadn't thought twice. And for the first time since Clara drained the account, I gave a genuine smile. Maybe I hadn't lost everything. Maybe it was just time to start calculating differently. I sat in the corner of Ben's kitchen, reopening old emails and bank statements from the past 2 years. Before, I skimmed them. Now, every line revealed a piece of the truth. Clara once told me, "You always make me feel like I'm just extra." I'd thought it was just a passing complaint, but now I realize it was a warning I ignored. Every month she transferred about $500 from our joint account into a side account for personal expenses, she claimed. But in recent months that number jumped to $2,000, then $3,800, like I'd just seen. Each time I asked, Clara had a ready excuse. Mom's birthday gift, vacation deposit, or just, "I've got a plan," and I believed her. Until one name kept appearing in the credit card transaction history. Harper Landscaping and Pool. A small company in Austin, a name that struck me as strangely familiar. I'd never hired them. We didn't even have a pool. I called Ben. "You ever heard of Harper Landscaping and Pool?" Ben thought for a moment. "That was Peter's company, my old neighbor. I remember the yellow sign, but I think someone else owns it now. Let me check." 30 minutes later, Ben sent me a screenshot from Facebook, an ad post. We're proud to offer landscaping, stonework, and in-ground pool construction in Austin and surrounding areas. Owner, Chase Ellison. I froze. Ellison Lane, the name on the bank transfer Clara made. I scrolled down to the photo section. One image showed a team installing outdoor lighting. And front and center was a tall, lean man in a black polo, brown hair slicked back. Chase. I recognized him. Not because we'd met before, but because Clara had once mentioned a friend in landscaping. Someone who understood lighting better than most architects. At the time, I didn't think much of it. She said he was just offering free advice. And once again, I believed her. That night, I quietly used Ben's phone to call Jackson, a former friend who used to work security in the neighborhood. I asked directly, "Do you know anyone named Chase Ellison who lives near 54 Cypress Lane?" Jackson hesitated for a moment, then said softly, "William, I'm not sure I should say anything. But, yeah, there's been a small truck with Harper Pool on the side, parked in front of your house almost every day for the past few weeks. I figured it was your landscaper." I gave a cold smile. "No, not mine. William, you weren't around much lately, so I assumed." "It's fine, thanks," I hung up. Suddenly, everything became painfully clear. The chest pain wasn't the only thing that had pierced me these past weeks. Worse than that was the fact that I had slowly backed away from my own life. Blind, complacent, and unwilling to ask questions, even when the signs were flashing right in front of me. I remembered one time, about 4 months ago, when I came home early after a delivery was delayed by a storm. Clara looked startled when I opened the door. She claimed she was on the phone with the bank and didn't want to be disturbed. The bedroom door was shut. I didn't hear anything, but something inside me went still. An odd, sinking feeling. I should have checked. But instead I hugged her, smiled, and said, "I'm home." I turned to Ben, who was just bringing out 2 mugs of hot tea. "What do you know about tracking account activity?" Ben raised an eyebrow. "What are you planning?" "Remember our niece, Sophie, the one studying cybersecurity? Call her. I need to know where Clara's been sending the money, for how long, and who else is tied to those accounts." Ben set the mug down, his face turning serious. "You sure about this?" I nodded. "I can't let myself be led around anymore, not one more minute." And for the first time in weeks, I felt my blood heating again. Not from anger, but from resolve. If Clara thought I was just a worn-out husband easy to leave behind, then she clearly never understood the man she once called everything. That morning I left Ben's house early. My heart was still fragile, but my mind had never been clearer. I drove the old car Ben had lent me to the main branch of a bank in Austin. Not the one Clara and I usually used, but the downtown headquarters, where things are handled by the book. The woman who helped me was named Denise, silver-haired, with a sharp, weary look like someone who'd seen too much bad news in her life. But when I told her what happened, that I'd just come out of the ICU after a near-fatal heart attack, and our joint account had been drained while I was unconscious, her eyes softened. "I'm so sorry you went through that," Denise said. "Do you have your hospital documents with you?" I handed her a copy of my discharge papers, hospital records, and confirmation that I'd been unconscious for 48 hours. "We'll open an internal investigation immediately," she said, her tone now professional. "However, since it's a joint account, Mrs. Clara Harper legally had access. But if you can prove you were temporarily incapacitated, draining the account could be considered financial abuse of a vulnerable adult." I nodded. "I don't need to win today. I just need to start." On the way back, I called Lou, a former law school buddy who now ran a small family and financial law office in Round Rock. Lou wasn't the type to ask unnecessary questions, just the ones that flipped the board over. "William? You're still alive?" Lou laughed over the phone. "I figured long-haul trucking finally swallowed you whole." "And Halden almost did," I said. "I need help, Lou. Fast and sharp." Meet me at my office at 3. Bring everything. Bank records, property docs, medical files, and if you've got proof of transfers to strange accounts, even better. I hung up and forwarded all the screenshots, statements, and info Ben and I had dug up on Chase Ellison. That afternoon, I also called Sophie, my niece, my older sister's daughter. She was in her junior year at UT Austin studying IT and cybersecurity. Her voice chirped brightly on the phone. "Uncle Will? Oh my gosh, I heard you were really sick. You must be getting better if you're calling me." "Getting there. But I need my tech angel to help dig into something." "I'm here for it," she said, full of confidence. I sent her a list of suspicious accounts, transaction histories, and the banking info Chase Ellison used to receive money from Clara. After scanning for a while, she said, "Uncle, this looks like classic income hiding. It's called structuring, keeping transfers under $10,000 to avoid triggering automatic reports. It's super common in shady divorces." I smirked. "They teach you this stuff at school?" "Out Reddit." I hung up and drove to Lou's office. He met me with a black coffee, no sugar, just how I liked it. We sat across from each other in a small room, stacked with files from people who once thought they'd spend forever together. Lou opened his laptop, looked through the files I'd sent. "Will, you need to know, Texas is a community property state. That means, in theory, everything earned during the marriage gets split 50-50. "I know. But," Lou said, eyes still on the screen, "if we can prove Clara committed financial fraud, especially while you were incapacitated, this case could shift dramatically, possibly even go criminal. That's why I came to you." Lou typed a few more keys, then turned the screen to me. The Ellison account received regular deposits from Clara, always under $10,000. But here's the kicker. In the last 2 months, some of that money was rerouted to an account under a business name, and you're gonna love it, C.L.N.E. Ventures, LLC. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles went white. Clara wasn't just moving money. She and that man had started a business together. Lou continued, "If they're funneling money into the company, they're trying to remove it from personal accounts, where it could be divided in a divorce. But once it's in the company, it's a different game. They can hide it." I leaned back. "So, what's next?" Lou leaned back too, arms crossed. "I'll send them a formal warning. Freeze all financial activity within 72 hours. At the same time, I'll file a motion in court to freeze every asset connected to both of them. If they try to move anything after that, they're digging their own legal grave." I nodded. "Do it." Lou stared at me. "You ready for this, Will? It's not going to be pretty." I didn't hesitate. "I almost died because of my heart. I'm not letting anyone crush it again." Sophie emailed me at 3 a.m. The subject line was simple: "Uncle, you need to see this." I jumped out of bed, opened my laptop, and clicked on the attachment. It was a detailed transaction log from a bank account under the name Clara Harper, one I had never seen before. It wasn't from any bank we'd used since getting married. It belonged to a digital bank called Valor Bank, a name I'd never seen on any of our financial records. Sophie had included a note. "This account was opened 18 months ago. There's a pattern of structured transfers. All the activity matches the weeks you were out of town. Basically your work schedule. Current balance, $132,740.58. I leaned back in my chair. This wasn't just a secret, it was a strategy. A silent financial campaign, carried out over years, right under my nose, precisely timed for when I wasn't around. I looked more closely at the log. The transfers weren't massive, between $200 and $9,500. Either pulled from sub-accounts or withdrawn from ATMs near our house. Each batch spaced roughly 10 to 15 days apart. There was a rhythm, like someone was following a planned disbursement schedule. I called Lou that same morning. He welcomed me to his office, visibly pleased but concerned. "I just called a buddy who works at the IRS. He confirmed. Clara's name is tied to an LLC formed about a year ago. The name? C.L.N.E. Ventures. And the kicker? The co-owner listed is none other than Chase Ellison." I froze. So she and that guy started a business together? Lou nodded. And they're using it to transfer money and hide assets before the divorce. It's not new, but it's gutsy enough to be considered financial fraud. Wasn't Chase a landscaper or something? I asked. More than that, Lou said, flipping open a private investigation report. He was sued for contract fraud in San Antonio, but the case got dropped due to lack of evidence. He moved to Austin 2 years ago, right around when Clara started working late nights. Everything was coming into focus like high beams hitting my face on a dark highway. Clara hadn't just betrayed me with another man, she betrayed me with a meticulously orchestrated financial plan. Each dollar carefully skimmed, mapped, and hidden. I clenched my fists. What are they planning to do with the money? Run? Buy a house together? Lou flipped a few more pages. It's more than just money. They're upgrading the company's financial profile. Looks like they're preparing to seek private investment, using that stash as leverage. I sat back, stunned. So they're using my money to build wealth for themselves? Lou nodded. And if we don't act, that entire balance could soon fall under company assets, completely out of reach in a divorce. I turned to Sophie, who I'd asked to join this emergency meeting at Lou's office. Can you prove this money came from my income? Sophie nodded. I've already done the breakdown. Almost all the transfers Clara made line up with your pay periods, either from the trucking company or contract work. We can show at least 90% of it came from your earnings. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of the cruel irony. For 2 years I'd lived on the road, sleeping in truck stops, surviving off gas station coffee, just to fund an illusion. An illusion Clara deliberately kept sweet, soft, and completely false. I looked back at Lou. What do we do next? He didn't hesitate. I'm filing for an emergency court order to freeze all assets under CL&E Ventures, and I'll request an investigation into potential asset concealment. If the court agrees, Clara and Chase won't be able to move another cent. I nodded, then stood up. And I'm going back to that house, but not to make peace. Lou raised an eyebrow. You sure? I need to see, with my own eyes, what's been hidden from me. And I want to leave them something. What kind of something? I looked him straight in the eye, voice low. A message they'll never forget. The following Monday, Lou and I stepped into Travis County Courthouse for an emergency hearing. I wore a dark blue shirt and a gray tie, the same one I kept for weddings, funerals, and now, betrayal. Across the room, Clara sat beside her lawyer, a stern-looking blonde named Janice Bloom. The way Janice sifted through her files and whispered to Clara told me this wasn't her first time representing someone hiding something. Judge Hayden Cole, middle-aged, wire-rimmed glasses and a gaze that cut through noise, banged his gavel. We're here today to review Mr. William Harper's emergency motion to freeze assets showing signs of being moved unlawfully. Lou stood and began presenting. Your Honor, while Mr. Harper was hospitalized after a serious cardiac event, Mrs. Clara Harper, his wife, emptied their joint account, transferring the funds into undisclosed accounts. We also have evidence that the funds were used to form a business in Mrs. Harper's name alongside another man, Mr. Chase Ellison, whom we believe she has both a romantic and financial relationship with. The judge nodded. Go on. Lou submitted account statements, medical documents, the CL&E Adventures LLC paperwork, and Sophie's financial analysis, which perfectly matched my work schedule and pay periods. Janice stood up, voice calm and firm. Your Honor, my client acted to protect herself financially, based on her belief that her husband was being deceptive and withholding assets. Furthermore, forming a company is not illegal and does not in itself suggest malicious intent. Judge Cole turned to me. Mr. Harper, do you have any additional evidence regarding the relationship between Mrs. Harper and Mr. Ellison beyond financial records? I nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I stepped forward and played a 35-second security camera clip from our neighbor's home, Clara and Chase embracing in front of my house, the same week I was in the ICU. Judge Cole watched the footage silently, then slowly removed his glasses and set them down. I need to ask, Mr. Harper, can you confirm this is your property? Yes, Your Honor. That's the right side of my house, recorded by Mr. Joe Harrison, my next-door neighbor. And the vehicle in the video? Can you identify it? It's Chase Ellison's. I've submitted plate number, photos, and registration confirmation. Janice whispered something to Clara. Clara's face turned pale. No longer the smug woman I once trusted. Judge Cole turned back. I am issuing a temporary freeze on all accounts tied to Mrs. Clara Harper, Mr. Chase Ellison, and CL&E Ventures. Neither party is permitted to conduct any financial transaction exceeding $500 without court notification. Lou nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. I am also referring this case to the Financial Crimes Investigation Unit for a full audit, specifically targeting hidden asset transfers during the pre-divorce period. Clara started to rise in protest, but Janice pulled her back down and whispered, Not now, be quiet. I leaned toward Lou and whispered, We've bought ourselves time. He nodded. At least until the full divorce proceedings begin. As the hearing ended, Clara tried to rush toward me in the hallway. I didn't meet her eyes. Even a glance could drag me back into that void. But she spoke. Will, you don't understand everything. I was scared. I thought you'd leave me. I was just protecting myself. I turned to her. No, you weren't protecting yourself. You betrayed me. And the worst part? You calculated every dollar, while I was lying there waiting for my heart to give out. She said nothing more. That night I returned to Ben's house. Sophie was waiting with a short update. Chase just scrubbed his social media. Clara changed her email password. I smiled wearily. They know they're losing. Ben placed a warm mug of tea in front of me. So, you ready for the next step? I nodded. This time, I'm not just protecting what's left. I'm taking back everything they thought they could steal, without paying the price. 2 weeks after the emergency hearing, Lou and I returned to the Travis County Courthouse to hear Judge Hayden Cole's preliminary ruling. The courtroom wasn't as crowded as last time, but the air was still thick with tension. Clara sat across from me. Her hair was curled neatly. She wore a dark blue blazer, but the confidence in her eyes was gone. Chase Ellison wasn't present. According to Lou, he'd hired his own attorney to separate himself from Mrs. Harper's financial dealings. A defensive move now that the water was rising fast. Judge Cole entered, his gaze as sharp as ever as it swept over both sides. Without unnecessary pleasantries, he got straight to the point. Based on the evidence presented, including medical documentation confirming Mr. William Harper's vulnerable condition at the time of the financial withdrawals, as well as the irregular transactions initiated by Mrs. Clara Harper, the court rules as follows. First, all shared assets, including bank accounts, real estate, and equity in the company CL&E Ventures, will be frozen for the duration of these proceedings. Neither party is permitted to transact, transfer, or spend more than $500 without a court order. Second, as Mrs. Clara Harper has shown signs of financially exploiting her husband's critical health condition, and has yet to prove the legality or mutual consent of such actions, the court is temporarily awarding exclusive use of the marital home to Mr. William Harper until a final divorce ruling is issued. I heard every word, but it took a few seconds to absorb it. That house, the one where I'd hammered every nail, installed every window, and cleared leaves each fall, was now officially mine, at least for now. And more importantly, Clara couldn't sell it, rent it, or destroy it. I glanced at her. Clara kept her head down, silent. Janice Bloom jumped to her feet in protest, but the judge simply tapped his gavel once and said coldly, Mrs. Bloom, you'll have a chance to argue your case during the full trial. Today's ruling is final. We're adjourned. Outside the courtroom, I took a deep breath. For the first time, the weight on my chest lifted. Lou clapped a hand on my shoulder. Not a total victory, but a huge advantage. Most importantly, Clara can't touch the assets anymore, and now you have time to build your case. I nodded, gripping the court order tightly. It's time to go home. The next day, I returned to the house in South Austin. Clara wasn't there. According to Lou, she'd moved into a temporary rental downtown to avoid a toxic environment, as she phrased it in her statement. I opened the front door with my old key and stepped into the familiar living room. Everything was in place, but it all felt strange. The couch sat exactly where I left it. Clara's ceramic coffee mug still rested on the table. But there was no scent of her perfume, no warm glow from the reading lamp. Just me, and the ghosts of memories wrapped around every object. I walked straight to the bedroom and opened the closet. The right side where Clara used to hang her dresses, heels, and designer purses was empty. She'd taken everything. I didn't stop her. I didn't regret it. The only thing that gave me pause was a small wedding photo still in the nightstand drawer. I stared at it for a moment, then placed it in a box and locked it away. Not thrown out, but not left in sight either. That afternoon, I stepped into the backyard. This was the area Clara had hired someone to redo. The same area I now knew was Chase's work. The paving stones were too new. The landscaping had that perfect Italian-style curve. But now, to me, it was just a beautiful stage built to hide something filthy. I texted Lou, back at the house. Everything's calm, let the countdown begin. A few minutes later, Lou replied. First hearing scheduled in 6 weeks. Prep all evidence, income records, company formation docs, and anything related to Ellison. I'll handle the rest. I turned off my phone and sat on the wooden steps. The sun was setting behind the fence. The evening light reflected off the eaves like a reminder. After everything, there's still a place to begin again. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. Not because I'd gotten revenge, but because I knew, from this moment on, Clara couldn't take anything else from me. Not even my peace of mind. The final hearing was held on a Tuesday morning in mid-June, beneath the brutal Texas summer sun. I entered the courtroom like a man who had nothing left to lose, and nothing left to prove. Everything had already been exposed. Every secret, every shady transaction, every lie. All that remained was the judgment. Clara sat across from me. She looked thinner, her hair pulled back, no bold red lipstick this time. The beige blazer on her shoulders looked heavy. Janice Bloom, her attorney, no longer carried that smug confidence. They were here to listen, no longer in control. Judge Hayden Cole looked over both sides, then read the case summary in a steady, firm voice. After reviewing all evidence, including Mr. William Harper's compromised medical condition at the time of the questionable financial activity, and the lack of transparency in the transactions initiated by Mrs. Clara Harper, the court issues the following final ruling. First, Mr. William Harper is granted full ownership of the marital home on Cypress Lane, including the land, fixed assets, and improvements made. Due to the refinancing completed prior to the incident and confirmed to have been paid from his personal income. Second, Mr. Harper will receive 80% of the shared savings. This includes funds that were withdrawn but are currently frozen in Mrs. Clara Harper's personal account and in the CL&E Ventures business account. Third, the personal truck will remain the sole property of Mr. Harper, as it was purchased before the marriage and maintained with separate funds. Fourth, Mrs. Clara Harper is awarded 20% of the remaining assets and is solely responsible for her own legal costs, including attorney fees, financial investigation charges, and penalties related to asset declaration violations. I didn't react. No smile, no sigh of relief. I just slowly bowed my head, like someone quietly closing the lid on a chapter that should have ended long ago. Clara said nothing. No tears, no apology. She just nodded and looked away, like one more second of eye contact might shatter her final layer of defense. I stood, thanked the judge, and shook Lou's hand. He had been more than just my attorney. He was the friend who helped pull me out of a darkness I thought would swallow me whole. In the hallway, as I was about to leave the courthouse, Janice approached me, speaking softly. "Mr. Harper, my client asked me to pass along a message, if you're willing to hear it." I turned, eyes steady. She said, "She never thought it would come to this. She says she doesn't want anything else." I looked Janice straight in the eye. "Neither do I. And that's why I'm not looking back. 2 weeks later, I officially moved back into the house that had once been filled with pain. But this time, there was no second set of footsteps on the hardwood floors. No more clicking of makeup brushes in the bathroom. No voice calling my name in that cold tone in the middle of the night. I sold almost all the old furniture, keeping only a desk, a wooden chair I'd repaired myself last winter, and an old radio my father left me. I bought a cheap guitar and set it in the corner of the living room. Not to play for anyone, but to remind myself that silence can have its own kind of beauty. The money in my account was enough to live comfortably for quite a while, but I didn't spend it recklessly. I began investing again in the freight coordination business. This time working from home, no more exhausting trips across states. I wanted to survive, not by avoiding pain, but by turning every wound into a foundation. Clara? The last I heard about her came from an old friend. She was working for a small company in Dallas, renting an apartment, and no longer involved with Chase Ellison. Apparently, he vanished once financial investigations started. Not surprising. Guys like him always disappear when things stop going their way. Didn't look into it any further. I didn't need to know how she was doing. All I knew was that after everything, I was still here, still standing, and no longer the man who believed love had to be bought with silence. One afternoon, I opened the wooden box in my drawer. Inside was our wedding photo. I stared at it for a moment, then folded it, slid it into an envelope, sealed it, and wrote on the front, "The past, no return address." I didn't burn it. I didn't throw it away. I'd put it somewhere I'd never open again, because the past can't be erased. But the future, that I can choose to rewrite. 2 months after the divorce, I stood in the living room of the house that used to be our home, watching the last moving boxes being loaded into a small truck. Everything was neatly packed. A few personal items, some books, the guitar I'd just started learning, and Dad's old radio. The rest, furniture, decorative lights, area rugs, had been sold or donated. I didn't feel sad. I felt lighter. The house on Cypress Lane had once been my dream, with Clara. But it was also the place where everything fell apart, from trust to heart. And now, I had no reason to stay. I sold the house for a decent price, thanks to the post-pandemic real estate spike. Part of the money went straight into a new savings account. The rest, I used to buy a small one-story house on the east side of Austin, close to Ben and Sophie's university. Not big, not fancy, but peaceful, and warm enough for a new beginning. The new house had 2 bedrooms, a small porch facing a field of wild grass, and a simple kitchen that still smelled like fresh pine. I spent 2 weeks repainting the walls, installing shelves, and fixing the leaky faucet in the bathroom. Not because I had time, but because I wanted every corner of the house to bear my mark. Something real. Not borrowed, not fake. As for work, I officially left long-haul trucking behind. The doctor had been clear. If you keep driving thousands of miles a month, you won't make it to 50, Will. I listened. I took a job as a dispatcher at a local freight company. Every day I arrived at the office at 8 a.m., scheduled routes for drivers, handled road incidents, and coordinated with clients. No more crossing state lines. No more sleeping in cramped cabs during rainy nights. Now, I got home by 6 p.m., ate dinner, watered my plants, and sometimes played a few clumsy chords on the guitar. On some nights, Sophie stopped by with pizza and college stories. On weekends, Ben brought his youngest daughter, and we grilled outside on the porch and watched football on an old projector. I began rewriting my life, 1 page at a time. No rush. What surprised me most was, I didn't feel angry at Clara anymore. Sometimes, sitting alone in the dark, I remembered her face in court. Those empty eyes, trembling lips, no longer confident. I didn't feel pain. I just felt regret. Regret for what could have been. Saved if we had talked sooner. If I'd realized that staying silent to preserve a marriage was a quiet form of destruction, I didn't wish her happiness. But I didn't wish her suffering either. I only hoped that somewhere out there, she'd realized love can't be measured by the money you pull from a joint account, especially when the other person is lying in the ICU, hooked to oxygen. One October morning, I received an email from my old company, the one I'd driven for nearly 17 years. My former manager invited me back, this time to work as a training instructor for new drivers. I read the email for a long time, then clicked accept. Not because I needed the money, but because I wanted to share what I'd learned. I wanted to tell someone, before it's too late, that no job is worth trading your health. That sometimes the person next to you isn't leaving because they're bad, but because you've been so busy living for others, you forgot to look at yourself. I started writing a blog under the name W.H. Harper, the Survivor, sharing stories about life on the road, how to spot cracks in a relationship, and how to get back up when everything you stood on suddenly collapses. The first post was titled, "A Heart Attack, a Betrayal, and a Life Rewritten." I didn't know who would read it, but by the time I typed the last line, I felt lighter. As if somehow I had finally forgiven myself. I'm not perfect. I'm just a man who once trusted the wrong person, who almost died from a heart that broke both physically and emotionally. But I'm still here. And this time, I'm living for me. William's story isn't just a journey through betrayal. It's proof that even after losses that feel impossible to recover from, we can rebuild a life with strength, clarity, and self-respect. From a man betrayed at his weakest, he learned how to rise, forgive, and create a new life. Quiet, meaningful, and full from within. Sometimes, loss is how life forces us to rediscover ourselves. What do you think of William's story? Would you forgive or let go the way he did? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful true stories and lessons from family life.